Hi, I'm Patrick Giguere with Cosmic Alchemist Astrology, and welcome to this new and riveting episode. And today I have a friend with me, my friend Terrence Walker, who I haven't seen in close to a year now, but I'm happy to have him, and I'm hoping we can work it out. So he's a regular guest. He's got a lot of great insights, and he's studied and learned and seen a lot of cool stuff over the years. So today we're going to talk about, the topic will be similar to a video that I just did about the new revolution, where I called July 16th, 2024, the new Independence Day for America and the start of the new revolution. So I brought Terrence here to get his point of view, and so he can add some new stuff. So Terrence, what do you think about all this?
Well, I had a chance to actually check out your video, which was packed with a lot of great intelligence. I think it's spot on about a lot of the things that you spoke about in the video about this Pluto return. I think it's fairly obvious on some levels to those of us that are paying attention to this. As things fold out with our country, with the government, with politics on that level. And I think we're already starting to see the crumble of certain things in regard to what's going on with the government. With Pluto return starting this last, or what was it, February the 22nd of this year or whatever, was when Pluto went direct or whatever. From even that point to now, I'm looking at some of the things that have happened with America, and just to start off with, the old structure has to crumble before the new can be put into place. And just some of the things that you've had a chance to kind of talk about that I thought was fairly interesting was the whole Saturn Neptune piece, and Saturn unveiling the illusions of so many things that have happened. From the financial structure to politics to education, we can see it on a large scale. So I definitely feel like we are in the midst of a great opportunity for those of us that are aware to take the horse by the rings and lead into a different direction, and not just be, continue to follow the illusion that's been given to us for so long.
Yeah, it seems like there's not a lot of trust out there for just these institutions anymore. And to me, what's going on can get so ridiculous, it almost lends some credence to this QAnon idea that the military's already taken over and all these people are just basically playing a role, and they're intentionally being ridiculous, to get us to wake up slowly. I don't think it's that simple, but their level of ridiculousness almost
I agree. I most certainly agree. It's kind of painful to watch. I'm sorry. It's kind of painful to watch, our president, on TV. It's it's not even simple mistakes that he's making here and there that anybody could make or whatever. It's I don't know, man. The guy seems like he's on his last leg.
Immigration needs to be in reconciliation. Must it be in reconciliation?
What must be what? What must be what? What must be what? What must be what?
Immigration, a pathway for citizenship.
It needs to be a pathway for citizenship. Whether it can be an immigration remains to be seen.
For the whole institution to put him in position to be the leader, you know, of the country says a lot about what's going on collectively. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like I can't swallow it, you know. I can't swallow
Yeah.
it for a lot of different reasons, as I'm sure many other people can't, you know. When it comes to that part about the QAnon, I believe there's a lot of true aspects to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, far as like is an institution that I probably would say is still fairly organized and ran a certain way because they have an agenda, you know, and they execute on the agenda on different levels. Like I feel like we've kind of seen that through the years with some of the alphabet agencies that we have, you know, whether it's the FBI, CIA, DA, whoever, you know what I mean? They all kind of like have their own missions and they've kind of like ran them the way they wanted to. So like when it comes to the military structure, and then the whole thing that I heard like a few years back about, like you said, slowly putting things in position to have us awaken. I think we saw that during the shutdown with the riots, you know. There was like all of this talk that we started to hear about you know, what do you call it? When you take over with force, I slipped my
like a
brain.
coup.
Yeah, like not well, cool. I can see a coup coming, but what like when it's lockdown, like the way they were doing, like in Minnesota and some
Oh,
of these places, like just I don't know, the word is just slipped my head for some reason, but just yeah, but more or less having the authority to come in and tell you what you're going to be able to do, you know, to
oh,
shut you down,
like a
you know.
martial law kind of thing.
Martial law. Thank you,
Okay.
sir. I
Okay.
appreciate it. You
Yeah.
know, it can definitely because I saw there like the talks about martial law starting a little while back, you know. And
Yeah.
it's like almost the perfect environment for it. And how long have they been studying to be able to do this? Who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like anytime we have like a natural catastrophe, whether it be a hurricane or something like that, you see how people respond. You gathered information and you do as you will with it, with like what you see about behavior. But then when the pandemic hit, you had people fighting over toilet paper, you know. So so it's like, you know, like the whole piece of like them wanting, if they wanted to like, you know, implement martial law, it's like, okay, you see food is becoming more and more scarce, you know, in the stores or just whatever resources people need. Like I think one of the more recent ones was like with the baby formula and, you
Oh,
know, things like that. So it's like, all you got to do is just cause panic. And
yeah.
then, you know, with the pandemic, whatever you want to call it, they, you know, kept people locked in their houses, you know what I mean? Where they were kind of like, they didn't know what to do. So they were just on screens. And then all of a sudden, what happens? Riots, you know, just everywhere, just riots.
Yeah.
So
Surprise, surprise.
yeah, surprise, surprise. So I can see, you know, there being certain people, you know, playing a hand in that. And then on another level, you know, I feel like whatever we see is always surface level. So it,
Mm.
you know, some levels, even with that whole QAnon piece, I saw that it was more or less they were saying it was a change of the guard, you know, out with the old, in with the new,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah.
Especially like when you get into the whole nuclear football thing and like
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
rod of God capability, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the it's funny, like on inauguration day, did you see that story about how they like narcissists won't admit that they fucked up or they're incapable. So they make up stories. So, you probably saw this. There was that story at like noon on inauguration day or like early afternoon where they said, oh, stupid Donald Trump forgot to give back the nuclear football and flew
Yeah,
home
I
to
did see
Florida.
this.
But it's
I did.
okay because Joe Biden's going to get a new one from the military. And it's like,
Really?
if you had a nuclear football and you were not authorized, like your plane would get shot out of the sky for good measure.
Exactly. Exactly. How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, like far as like the illusion that they give us. And it's done a good job of causing a lot of confusion or just frustration, if anything,
Yeah.
for those of us that are aware, you know. And with that whole, I mean, even with some of the stuff that's going on, like even now, you know, like, and our connection to it globally, you know, on the geopolitical level, you know, I think when we start talking about economics and just the whole role of the dollar itself and the way the world is changing right now, like you have this whole piece of electric versus petroleum, you know, and that's causing a real funk, you know, because when you get into war for dollars, that's part of the old regime, you know, and you got these new kids on the block who have their own agenda, who pushing something else, and the tide is turning. But to say who's playing on what side of that and how they're playing, I mean, you know, I can be guessing all day as to like who's doing what, but it's very obvious to see it though, you know, on a lot of different levels.
Yeah. And it seems like, you know, I like how you brought up the petroleum car versus the electric,
Yeah.
because it's an example of how there's such a narrow debate and there's like conflict within that. And it's like either way, you're arguing about what kind of horseless carriage you want to drive. Like
Exactly.
back in the 60s, we were on track to have like flying cars in the 80s, but then it's like they kept us stuck in like 1972 of like,
exactly,
you know, like Vietnam and shitty economy and gas.
Yeah.
So it's
Oliver
like,
North, all those guys, you know, just, I mean, the one thing I can tell you for sure, you better not create an engine that runs on water, because we kind of seen what happens with that, you know, like a couple times, you know. So so it's like you said, it's very narrow, you know what I'm saying, as to what you are allowed or what they want you to be allowed to do. If you're not on this side, then you're on this side. You can't have your own side, you know? Like you can't have your own mind. You can't operate from what you feel like is the best for you. You know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people that, you know, if they were given a chance, collectively, they will come up with something better than both of those ideas, you know?
oh God.
You know, so I mean, especially when we start talking about, I mean, they would never discuss that piece about like free energy, because like I said, once again, we're talking about economics, and if they can't make money off of you, then you're a problem, you know, point blank. You know, if they can't make money off of you one way or another, then it's an issue, you know.
Like you're not a producer,
Exactly.
you're not bringing anything in.
Exactly.
You're a problem. It's
exactly.
like even if you like it's like even if you're on like a reservation, you know, and like you're getting your like Bureau of Indian Affairs pension, it's like you're still producing because you're sinking the country deeper.
Exactly.
The money to give you.
Exactly. You know, and man, you know, and it makes people, I think, you know, when things, there's been a lot of jacked up stuff that's happened in a lot of those aspects, but I think when you pacify some people, you know, it takes away their strength for them to be able to really stand on their own, because you know, it's kind of a pacify effect that's going on there, you know what I mean? And it doesn't take long for people to forget their own history. you know, and who they
Uh,
really are, you know. So once, you know, you've been able to kind of like, you know, 2, 3 generations away from the source, and you can feed them, you know, somewhat of a story and pacify. It's like, oh, well, I guess this is just the way it goes, you know.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think,
Well,
mhm,
interesting about the history, because with these pharmaceutical open trials that we can't really talk
mm,
about specifically that have been going on, it's
mhm,
like a conqueror's tool to get rid of the old people.
you better believe it.
And it's like
You better
2 years
believe it.
in.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
man. Yeah, especially with pharmaceuticals. I mean, uh, man, I don't know when it got so bad. You know what I mean? Maybe it's always been that way, but it just seemed like in the more recent years, like last 20 years or so, you know, where I started to come into adult, you know, once I was an adult, it was a lot easier to see what was going on different levels with what they were willing to do with the American people,
mm,
you know, like starting with, you know, the war on drugs in the 80s and that whole thing, you know, and
yeah.
them being such a big part of what was really the problem, you know what I mean? But it was hush hush, couldn't talk
Yeah.
about it. It's like, oh, we're doing all these things to stop it, but it was the other hand that was actually bringing it in, you know what I mean? So you know,
That's the thing about war with this country,
mhm,
is it's like whenever
mhm,
there's a war declare on something, it's like CIA and their buddies are actually creating it. It's like if you're in the military and you went to war in Afghanistan,
mhm,
they're
mhm,
double
mhm.
dealing.
Yep,
They're
yep,
empowering the militias that you're gonna fight against, and
yep,
they're in the drug trade, and they're bringing it here to sell to everybody.
yep.
Targeting the shit out of like inner cities. You know what I mean? It's like,
Completely,
so
completely.
it's like you got to spend a career just countering the effects of them, because your enemies would have nothing without them.
Nothing. And it's funny that you kind of like, you know, mention like the inner cities. Had a chance to work in drug rehab and like, you know, drug court and things like that. And Baltimore City.
Wow.
And you know, the thing about it is you know for absolute sure there's no one in the city that's capable of bringing the quantity, the mass, or the potency of a lot of these narcotics into the city. So on one hand, you have it coming in whatever way it needs to come in, and it's usually like that with port towns. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Everywhere there's a port. But then on the flip side of it, the people who actually are capitalizing on it is big pharma, like with the Sabatin and things like that. You know what I mean? So you get on drugs, the drug is so strong, you can't just go through a regular detox because they'll kill you.
Yeah.
So we give you another drug to help you stabilize on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, so like I said, like a lot of those things, like, I mean, it's very obvious for those of us that are dealing with sound mind and doing our own research and things like that to be able to see what's going on. But this is part of that crumbling thing. You know, they've done it for so long, you know what I mean? In one way or another, where I just feel like is at its peak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is so much in our face. We see it in the movies or TV series or
Yeah.
whatever, and it's just so like, yeah, no question about it. You know, like, okay, yeah, we know that happens, but why? You know, why? Like, why is it still okay if we know that that's happening? You know, where is the pushback against that piece. And I think that's what's coming. I think that's what's coming. I think people are getting to a level of frustration, which I think is necessary. Pressure,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
pressure has to be there, for people to finally get tired of what's really happening for change to come about. And without it, I don't really think that it would be possible. So like I said, as we move closer to these dates, I think we're like, with what we do know and what we do see, is going to create an element of like or is going to plant a seed, which I feel like has been planted in many places, that's going to continue to get watered, to be like, no, I'm not taking that, or I'm not accepting that anymore.
Yeah. I like how earlier you brought up that conversation with that professor. And you're asking, why is the educational system hobbled, and how come you can't teach certain things? And he said, well, I'd lose my tenure. And it's like, well, when are people gonna put
exactly
the common good and the commonwealth over their mortgage, and what brand of clothes the children are wearing? It's not going to mean anything if everything falls apart.
That is what I'm saying. And part of the problem is just because someone goes to school to be an educator doesn't really mean they're an educator.
No. Oh yeah.
That's to start. I feel like there's a lot of people displaced for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And being able to benefit off of the fact that they can say things like that. I can't because.
Yeah. The American dream was a wrecking ball, man. It's just like
exactly. So in regard to education and just some of the things that we've seen over the years with the Department of Ed on different levels, whether it be, even with like for-profit education, I've seen how that monster has like really devoured people. Like, I've had a chance to do a couple of different things in my life. At one point in time, I worked for one of these institutions. The institution as a whole, they had some good aspects to it, but they were just one of the teeth in the mouth of the monster. You know what I mean? Where they're more concerned with retention rates. They're not concerned with you getting an education, overpriced, overpriced. They're all a part of the whole game. They need to be able to keep their retention so that they can continue to get people. Now, at this particular institution, I would see, I've worked for a few of them. So let me say that, like, not just one, I've worked for a few of them, when I was doing educational sales. And you get in a position where even the people that work there that are supposed to be representatives of some sort who's supposed to be helping people enroll in education, to get their education for whatever reasons or whatever. The way they're trained is they're trained like used car salesmen to get the sale, and then they pit people against each other, almost like the old WorldCom MCI model. And I worked for WorldCom MCI back in the day too, so I can speak on that, where they were teaching you to slam people, you know what I mean? And they
the competitors?
No, not the competitors, the actual people that you were trying to get the service.
What?
Like harassment tactics, the whole nine. He's like blowing people because you would not get paid if you didn't do so. You know what I mean? And they have you in what they call pits. And in these pits, you have in the beginning, you got like a roll call where they're trying to rally everybody up and this team against that team. And let's say you actually do get a sale or whatever, you get a sale, but if that person cancels the sale because they felt like you didn't explain everything to them, for every sale that you miss, you got to get 4 more. And you're working for minimum wage almost. And most of the people who are working in these places are, in college, young professionals trying to pay their bills. So it's like, yo, my check is about to get docked because this person can't. So all my moral sense of what I'm supposed to be doing to help offering a service, it goes out the window. And the reason why I'm saying that I made a point, a reference to that was because with educational sales, I remember a few times making calls to outbound calls to people that were interested in enrolling in one of these for-profit education institutions. And a lot of times they would have us call in places in the South, in the deep South. And you would be surprised at the stuff that would be going on. You had ministers of churches, no lie, ministers of churches that was getting the entire congregation to fill out financial aid and telling them that if they did this, they would get free money that they didn't have to pay back, but they would have to get half of it to them.
What?
No lie. It was so
Wow.
ridiculous. So by the time that the Department of Ed caught up to a lot of what was going on, because people just wanted sales, people just wanted people to enroll so they can get the commissions and they can move up the brackets and things like that.
Oh my God.
By the time they figured out what's going on, like how many lives have you jacked up by that point in time, And I'm glad to say that I didn't take part in any of that. I have a soul. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't need to lie, like I would actually, I had a thing about just telling people the truth. If I felt like they weren't ready for what they were going to get into, because a lot of times these people, this is like their last hope. Like, okay, yeah, I need to go back to school because society tells me I need to go to school so I can get this education, so I can have a better job. So they honestly really want to do what's right. You know what I mean? And they think this is the way. I'm like, no, don't do it. Don't waste your money. So just to hit on that whole piece about the education, I just felt like I would just share that story about how corrupt these systems really were. So this didn't come out in the mainstream, but when the Department of Ed started cracking down on for-profit education, it was because they were literally raping people and putting them in some ridiculous circumstances. That's why when it comes to like student loans and like having to pay back all this freaking money for education, where we just spoke about professors telling you, I can't teach you these things that are actually true and real because I'll lose my tenure on one end. And then they're, not concerned with the well-being of people who actually really want an education, but they just want you to take out a student loan so you're in debt. At some point, it's gotta implode, So the illusion is kind of like really beginning to explode. I mean, like I said, I feel like it's at its peak on a lot of different levels where you've ran your race.
Yeah. The amazing thing though is like it seems like institutions and powers that be, they've trained people so well that like, it's like you're saying, when you have a soul and you want to be honest, it's like people don't know how to take you.
No, exactly.
When you're trying to like deal with them like fair and square, and there's like, I don't know about this guy. This guy's kind of making me uncomfortable. It's like,
you better believe it.
They're so used to being fooled. It's like they're totally out of comfort zone.
If you're not trying to steamroll me, I have so much trauma that I don't know how to accept someone who is genuinely trying to be honest with me. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I think a lot of people struggle with that. They would rather you abuse them because they're so used to that.
Thank you for that. I never took it to that point where it was about the trauma, but that really makes sense.
Yes, definitely. And it's ingrained in society, especially our society, like to always try to get over on somebody, or what's your angle? Always got to have an angle. So when I see this in business all the time, like sometimes people don't know how to take me because I'm very straightforward and honest. This is what you're gonna get. I think that's the way to do great business. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the way you should do business. But what I've seen, like in a lot of different sectors, is like the people who really get ahead, and this is nothing new, are the people who are very dishonest and lie.
Yeah.
And people, and here's the funny part about it. People will accept the lie, knowing it's a lie, and then complain about it, but don't want you to help them really to get it on track. Because now their excuse is, I've been burned before.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, so the trauma runs deep. Trauma runs deep in that regard.
Yeah. It's like the story of the human family.
Yeah. But I also feel like the younger generations, or just our generation in particular, I'll speak about our generation, we've had the opportunity to see how things were. We were like that last of that breed, and before how things are. So we kind of like right there. So we know that a lot of us know the truth,
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like it's up to us, because we are at that point, like we're not young anymore, but we're not old. We're very capable. We've seen so much of different aspects that both sides don't see, where it's going to take our generation to kind of like step up and kind of like have that voice and want to, make that change,
Yeah, we're almost like a hinge on the door.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned it to you before, but if you're born in like 80, 81, 82, like we are, it's like your karmic nodes, your north and south node, your Rahu, Ketu, are very close to those of United States of America when it was born.
Yeah. Okay.
That whole that in the sidereal, it's a Cancer Capricorn axis.
Wow.
So Rahu is like what you want to acquire, what you want to take in that you can't get enough of. So you put a Rahu in Cancer, that's freedom.
Freedom.
And the K2 is what you cut away and leave behind, your South Node. It's your past life karma that you've already mastered it. You don't need any more. So Capricorn symbol is the knees, and it's like bending the knee, and it's like the servitude, and it's having to just suck it up and do what you're told. So.
And I can see that. I mean, that kind of gave me chills a little bit, because that's exactly where I feel like I am in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not really willing to just do anything. Like if it's not purpose driven, I'm not going to budge. It doesn't really matter. Like about the so-called status quo, whatever that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like at this point, it's like, okay, how am I, what good am I to myself and those in my community, or those that I feel are part of my tribe, or the ones I care about and love and things like that, because it's such a mess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a mess to the point of where, it was activated enough of that where I feel like, nah, I have to stand on what I believe to be true in these values, you know what I mean? And it does have me in a place of wanting to serve, on certain levels, and things like that, so that's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. And it's like we were talking about the other day where, George Washington was like 43 when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So it's like, not that he was perfect, but
but that's a serious number. That's a very serious number. Like for a lot of, that's when a lot of great men in history have like started there or begin to make their mark, around that 40, you're not young enough to be naive, and you're not old enough to say you don't have the energy to implement change,
Totally.
I mean, even as far back as biblical times, like Just looking at that whole aspect, like Moses is like 40, when he decided that he was going to lead his people out of, oppression, and that sort of thing. So that 40 mark kind of pops up all over the place.
Yeah. You ever seen the thing with Venus with the star pattern like around the sun?
No, I haven't.
So I'm on my browser right now. I'm trying to find a diagram. Venus basically makes like a 5-pointed star, like a pentagram around the sun.
Really?
It takes 40 years, and I'm trying to.
Wow.
Let me see if I can pull it on the browser here. I'll show you.
That would be awesome. 5-pointed star around the sun. Man, that is so loaded with like
oh, what is it? Or wait, is it 8 years or is it? I think it's 40 because that's why I think you see so many. Man, I should have prepared this one.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, but even like the 5 points on the star, I mean, just dealing with like numerology, 5 is the number of change.
Yeah.
Wow. Are you kidding me? No, this is the first time I actually saw this.
So, this stuff's so deep, man.
Yes.
I think it's 40 years for Venus to hit all these 5 points.
Wow. Okay. Man, my head is like exploding right now.
Yeah. So what is it's every 8 years it reaches one of these.
Okay, so all right, boom.
Exact in
So,
geometry.
and this is Venus, right?
Yeah.
Well, okay.
So it's
So
like 40 years in the desert,
yeah, 40 years in the wilderness.
Because Venus is that teacher on Earth that's more sympathetic to humanity.
Yeah, the planet of love. Okay. So, and then so this is Venus and the Earth in 2012, 2004, right here, like this. That's what that's telling us right there. Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder, in which direction does it move? From left to right?
Let me see.
If you don't have it, it's cool, but
yeah.
it's
I'm thinking I think it's counterclock.
Counterclockwise. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, because when the planets are going direct, they go counterclock, but then
that's true.
The nodes
Okay, gotcha.
Clock. I think. Yeah.
No. I think you are right too, because like when something is
through the charts, they go counter.
Yeah. So okay, so boom. So I'm just looking at the points on the stuff because, like, I don't remember what they are, but each line on a 5-point star represents something. Yeah. So certain, like one of these lines, I believe the one, depending on which way you're looking at the star, has something to do with heightened intuition or psychic abilities.
Okay.
I think it might be the longer one that goes straight across the star, whichever way it is or whatever. So I was kind of like looking at this whole thing because it seemed like we're coming into a whole space of and like more knowledge, just knowing, you know what I mean? Not having to read a book, anything like that. You can just kind of like see, and because of what's already happened, you just know, you know what I mean? So that's why I was kind of like looking at like which way or where the star was actually hitting on. But I just kind of feel like that's where we are at the moment of this hint and heightened level of intuitive ability to just to know,
Yeah, that's how God and nature they're gonna defeat all the censorship and all the
exactly, and that's
media and publication. They're like, well, we're just gonna turn on the telepathy. Screw you people.
Exactly. And the funny thing about that, like with the age of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius is the age of knowing. Like, so we're coming out of the information age and we're going into the age of like knowing, you know? So it has a lot, like I said, this thing is loaded with symbolism. I'm definitely going to have to check this out again. I had no idea
It's cool.
that it creates that pattern. And then the geometry of it, you know, it's so precise.
Yeah. 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 It's there's a thing too, like with Chinese medicine. Let me pull that up. Let me see. So with the 5 elements, you get different cycles. Let me see. Okay, well, I think this is a good one. So you got the circle. So they call that the Sheng cycle, the creation cycle. So that's basically like you got wood, fire burns wood, creates ash, which creates earth, you know, like refertilizes the earth. And then in the earth, the minerals concentrate, create
Got
metals.
it.
The metals get into the atmosphere and they help condensation in the clouds, create rain, the water, and then the water feeds the wood.
I see.
So you've got that, but then on the inside, you've got that pentagram.
Yeah.
So if you go clockwise with it, basically like prunes and trims, right? So wood grows through the earth, like the roots grow through it and kind of hold it.
Yes.
But then it's protecting it from erosion. Earth will channel water. It's like canals, you know, riverbanks.
Yep.
Water.
Then it heats up.
Yeah. Yeah. Water will extinguish fire. Fire will melt metal. Metal will chop wood.
That is deep. Yeah.
And then it'll go counter. So it'll go, they call it the insulting cycle. I don't like that word. I like purification cycle because when I do the spirit fighting, like I've been telling you about, it's like part Qigong, part Kung Fu. It's like, you go in that order because it purifies your energy body.
So you go in the counterclockwise?
Yeah, so along the pentagram. So you go from wood to metal to fire to water and then to earth.
Okay.
And that stirs up your emotional shitstorm and like you feel like you're going crazy.
Understood. So so a question for you, you know, with like the spirit fighting and just some of these heavy energies that we're coming through as, you know, when we move through this transit with this Pluto return or whatever, you know, some of these energies, you know, when it comes to like cosmic alignments and things, you know, sometimes people do things with like the moon and stuff like that, that probably isn't the best stuff to do, you know? So like, if someone's feeling heavy in energy, like the energy just felt like out of balance or whatever, then you would move a certain way according to what this chart is showing you to bring yourself back into alignment.
You could totally do that. Yeah.
That's really good. I mean, the level of understanding like what's happening in the cosmos and how it affects your body, you really can't get away from it. You know, I know some people I think more and more people are seeing the importance of it, but you know, just growing up, it was kind of like entertainment, like these ancient sciences and arts was like entertainment. To kind of like downplay how serious they really are, because then you would be able to heal yourself or come into a higher states of consciousness and not be trapped by the illusion that they actually wanted to project onto you. You know what I mean? So this is pretty deep. This is cool stuff right here.
Oh man, it's amazing. It's like you have to stick around here for centuries, I think, to really master it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
which happens to people sometimes.
yeah, they repeat cycles. You know what I mean? Like if you refuse to deal with certain karmas or lessons of life or whatever they may be, I mean, that's what I don't, when it comes to ascension and things like that, I feel like it doesn't stop just in this life, that we
Mm.
get to live here, I think there's levels of it just at the soul level of it,
Yeah.
where you reincarnate according to, you know, what your whole makeup, what I'm saying, as far as like what you did in the previous life, and then you revisit some things from a previous life, whether they're good or bad, or however you need to put that, they just are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've personally had some personal experiences that have kind of like really opened my given me more insight as to what this whole thing of life really is about, way beyond what they try to limit us to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and in that regard, not to get too far off track here, but just
No, it's cool.
with like, I'll use dreams, for example, you know what I mean? They try to tell you like, oh, that's fake, or not fake, or it's not real, is what they try to say a lot of times. It's not real, this and that. Well, what's real, and what's your level of understanding of like conscious and subconscious, or inner conscious, to be able to determine what's really happening? Because I really truly believe that we're multi-dimensional beings, and
Oh,
you
yeah.
might just not be aware of yourself on those levels, and like I said, I've had some experiences where I wasn't asleep at all that brought me into higher states of consciousness, just because of where I was vibrating, and that gave me more light to be able to see, you know what I mean? And really, when we talk about light and dark, that's really what it is. Do you have an overstanding or understanding of this, of whatever's you're dealing with, or are you oblivious to it? Are you in the dark about that? You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so, when we look at things on from that perspective, and just kind of looking at some of these ancient arts that we're talking about here, astrology, and just your chi and things like that, I believe this is where we're coming. I believe the cosmos are forcing us to come back into a space to really look at this. You know what I mean? I think we've been in the dark,
Yeah.
and I think in previous times, I believe other societies have been more aware of that because of where they were, but because there's nothing new under the sun, this cosmic clock does its thing the way it wants to do it. And it's a reason why these ancient societies were paying attention to the cosmos, and were charting things, and
Yeah.
have a certain level of understanding of who they were and what they were doing, that we are so far from, like we can't even answer certain questions about things that we physically can see and touch on the earth.
Yeah.
So so they say entertainment, but I'm just like, yeah, like, really? Is it really entertainment? Like,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we have a, our capital city, Swampington, DC, Washington, DC. It's it's based around a constellation Virgo, and it has all this geometry in it. And the way I'm seeing things play out, that city is almost like a time capsule.
I can see that.
And it's
I
like,
can definitely see that.
because I think everything the founding father, oh, we got the thunder, we got Thor.
I hear it on there.
Confirmation.
I miss that about the Carolinas, man. I miss the summer thunderstorms. I really do. I can't lie. You know, I guess that's just the Carolina boy in me.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I bet because they're nice. I bet you'd miss it.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything the founding fathers did, it was ahead of their time,
Hmm.
and they weren't even ready for it.
Yeah.
Because even in the Declaration of Independence, they talk about all men are created equal, and people, and people say, well, what the fuck? They were, they were
Right.
slave owners, and it's like, and the thing about that is in their own letters, they called out their own hypocrisy, like Thomas
True.
Jefferson, and
True.
and he was
Very
like, yeah,
true.
this is totally fucked up,
True.
but he was the professor at the tenure, because if he had just freed everyone, people probably would have come and taken his shit. And,
True.
and he didn't know how to live without his estate. You know what I mean?
True. Like, don't take my tenure, the same thing. Like, I can't because, that's kind of been the motto. But far as DC, yeah, you're absolutely right. I believe that too. And I also believe that they only had a certain level of the knowledge, now they can say they had 33 degrees of it. Okay, sure. All right. So now how much they even understood about that, the 33 degrees that they were exposed to or they had, I think was very limited.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the whole thing is 360 degrees total.
Yeah.
So they were only operating out of 33 degrees that they had a limited understanding about, even in that sense.
Yeah. Well, and
So,
it's telling too, because, they say that Ben Franklin suggested July 4th because of the Aquarius moon. So if you go to the top left of this chart, that number 11 is Aquarius and that MO is the moon. So he chose the damn Aquarius moon. But then when you look to the bottom right, number 4, Cancer, you
yeah,
get that MER, that's Mercury Retrograde.
dude. Okay, so
So
now we're
and you
talking
and
on some
you told
stuff.
me, I don't want to get in a lot of detail, but you told me about, that Prince Hall Lodge
Yeah,
that you were associated with for a while, and they would sign documents under Mercury retrogrades, and it's like
yeah, yeah.
maybe they were imitating that, but to their own destruction.
I don't even think they knew, like maybe they
Probably.
did and maybe they didn't. Who knows? I'm not sure what they knew.
I think these
On
societies have gotten so just
Yeah,
misinformed and unformed
yeah.
and corrupted. They don't even.
Yeah, I think, I think a lot of people are unaware and under the influences of things that they may not even realize that they're under the influence of,
Yeah.
because it takes a certain level of consciousness, you know what I mean, to understand that you think that you're just doing things to be doing them, but there's a certain order to things. And if you aren't aware of what's going on, one thing that I've learned in life is if you're not in charge of yourself, something else is. Yeah, that's that. So I can say that,
Nature hates a vacuum.
yeah, yeah. If you're not aware, you're not in charge. If something else is, period, point blank. The other thing that I think that's interesting about what you said about this Aquarius moon here, July 4th also is kind of like when the Dog Star series is rising.
Oh,
She's been charging up behind the sun for, I think they said, about 70 days or so.
wow.
But when she comes from behind the sun fully bright, it also starts the monsoons in Africa. So
Really?
now we have this whole thing of fertilization and just outpouring, you know what I mean? So to what level did they understand, you know what I mean? I don't know, because when you get into like Masonic, things or whatever, it's really a self journey, it's really a self journey. Like, so when it comes to the lodges and things like that, man, it's yeah. A lot can be
Yeah.
said about that, and sadly, not a lot of good stuff for obvious reasons, and the abuse of power, and just greed and whatever else, was you know, someone's purpose for that or whatever. But, you know, with masonry more or less is, is mother son, you know, anyone who comes through the womb of a woman, you know, then is Mason, you know what I'm saying? It's, you know, and then you can get into some of the things about Mary, you know what I'm saying? And just the Virgin Mary
Mm,
and and the son and things like that or whatever. So,
yeah.
now to what level, I don't know what the founding fathers were thinking on that level, whatever, because like you said, like so much information has been redirected, you
Yeah.
know, and then what I've come to understand is that a lot of people are very limited in even their own understanding. I mean, they can have the knowledge, but are they very conscious? Are they conscious about what it really is? You know, now to say these
Yeah.
guys, I would like to think so, you know, to some level, but even still, because the fraternities had already been infiltrated, you know what I mean, by some people who that didn't have the greatest intention for humanity,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, because that was originally the original was supposed to be the preservers of the light, you know, the preservers
Yeah.
of truth.
Yeah.
And I've personally seen, you know, not only just in some of the circles that I've been able to be in, but just as abroad, a lot of people are not operating in light. They're operating in darkness, you know,
Yeah.
and they comfortably, actively are okay with that, you know. And I think that has a lot to do with like where we are right now, again, with this Pluto return. You know what I'm saying? Like
Hell
all of
yeah.
these things been exposed and people having to be being held accountable for it. Not even just people, you know what I'm saying? Like just energies that govern a certain space are going to have to be held accountable
Mm-hmm.
for, you know, the way things have held out. Like, because when we start to talk about the celestials, you know, and Saturn and things like this, it governs all of that, you know, there are universal laws that have to be followed. And if they're not, eventually judgment is held so that it can bring things back into order, you know.
Yeah.
So I agree with, you know, no, well, I mean, it's not like I can disagree with it, but I can just see very clearly how, you know, what we're leading into, we're going into that direction and what that really means for us, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, but yeah, going back to that Cancer, you know, that Mercury retrograde is, and that Rahu, that North Node. This is, you know, North Node or that Rahu. That is, it's like your present life karma. It's, you know, I think karma is synonymous with the word desire.
Mm-hmm.
So your soul had these desires that brought you into this life. So it's like I said, for us born in like 80, 81, 82, it's just like on this chart for America here. So that Rahu is in Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Now for America, it's in Cancer. It's in this eighth house. So the eighth house is like the doorway to spirituality. So it's like divination, astrology, energy medicine. It's where like you discover that this spirit world exists, and it's like your deep unconscious emotions. It's transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
basically, it's like America's destiny is to find freedom through this spiritual dimension.
I can see that. I
And
can
that's
see
with
that on a
us
lot of
too.
different levels. Yeah. Man, this is so okay. Wow.
So it's
Especially, all
like,
right, so I mean, especially with the eighth house, you know, dealing with just like, you know, occultism and things like that, you know what I mean? There's a lot of that, like you said, in the nation's capital, you know, that is just, it's ingrained in the architecture of the land,
Yeah.
for certain reasons. And like you said, and you can honestly, I don't know about anybody else. When I'm in DC, I can feel the power coming
Yeah.
off of some of these structures, like
Oh, yeah.
undoubtedly. When you're like on the mall with the Washington Monument and the White House and the Congress and things like that, like you can feel it. And that also kind of makes me think about like the big speeches that were held in DC, like Dr. King, like his speech is still reverberating throughout the cosmos, you know what I mean? Like I'm in Europe, and I went past a skate park, and like in graffiti, somebody graffiti, and there's a mural of Dr. King
Wow.
saying, "I have a dream," you know what I mean? And
Wow.
it's like, it's so wild to me, because like, I mean, that part, that particular neighborhood is it's not the the higher echelons, it's like very humble, status,
Mm.
as far as people, whatever, people that probably have like migrated or immigrated here from other places because they come from war-torn countries and things like that or whatever. But the message still hits home with people that have been oppressed around the world, you know what I mean? And I think about that. I was like, I wonder, like, when he had his dream, if he had the capacity to understand that it was going to travel to places where he would never go, people he would never see, and a lifetime beyond when he even gave the speech, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um,
On some
I
level, he was a guy just like us, and he was just doing his thing. And he's like, man, I hope somebody gets something out of this. And
yeah.
it was so much more. But he was on the world's like performance altar, which is that city.
Exactly.
It's like if he'd
Even
done
when I
it in
go
New
to the
York.
Lincoln Memorial, I've been to the Lincoln Memorial a couple times with my girls, and just when you go inside of Lincoln Memorial, you can just feel the energy. You can feel it, like it's one of those things where you feel like, okay, there's another frequency that is operating here, and of power, of power, whether you see it as good, whether you see it as bad, you're indifferent, but you can't deny the vibration of power that is running through downtown DC for sure. So it's very interesting that we have this piece here with the eighth house with occultism. I'm still chewing over that whole piece about that Mercury retrograde, though. Like
Yeah.
that that says a lot. That says a lot. Like when Mercury is in retrograde, it affects all communications. All communication is affected, and a lot of times, like you said, they tell you to be very, very careful about anything you're signing under Mercury retrograde. Like, you have to be very careful. You have to look at it, like all the details of it,
Mm.
because if not, it's coming back to bite you. For now, how many cycles, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen people sign contracts, people make agreements, on different levels during a Mercury retrograde without having that knowledge. And it's come back to be pretty catastrophic for them because of their unawareness of like what they were doing at that time, with other transits probably that were at play as well. But that Mercury technology, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That has a big thing to do with Mercury retrograde as well. It's like when your phone just start acting funky, the printer doesn't want to work, all that kind of stuff is associated with the Mercury retrograde. So
Mm.
Yeah, so that I'm gonna chew on that one because I'm very interested in kind of like just kind of like chewing that over and looking at what did that really mean, or did they already know that, to some degree,
Yeah.
be very interesting to know.
Yeah. And I'll give you one last little piece. So that PUS,
Yeah.
it's a lunar mansion, Pusha or
Uh-huh.
Pushami.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the lunar mansions of like teachers and gurus.
Mm.
So it's not so much like the guru. It's not like a Sadguru and he's kind of on his throne and he's like, well, this is the way it is and just do it. It's like, it's a teacher because it's Cancer and it's kind of maternal, like takes care of you and it,
Mm-hmm.
does things
Mm-hmm.
kind of hands on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. To me, it's like we really have to embrace this desire to be free and to use spirituality to do it, but to really get our intellects into it.
Yeah, I mean, because man, now really looking at it from that angle, like people's beliefs have been controlled by their beliefs. You know what I mean? That like whether it's through religion or what other aspects people use, but a lot of times here, well, within the states, um, religion is is a really big deal, and
Mm,
the way it's been geared, to control the way people believe and what they believe, stems from, like I say, from the parents. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah,
they're pretty seasoned in understanding, like if you can control a person's belief, then you don't have to put a chain on them. You don't have to like put any kind of lock on them whatsoever, because you control what they believe. So you have their perspective. You know what I mean? Like you control
yeah,
their perspective about who they are, what they are, and what they're capable of doing. So that's very interesting. Very
yeah.
interesting.
And the encouraging thing to me is that, so July 16th, 2024, when Pluto comes back to this exact degree and minute in its return, Mercury is going to be direct back in Cancer.
Boom.
So it's almost like the spiritual power could crack open and get released.
Yeah, it's oh man, it's like it's like a slingshot effect, just wind back and then released,
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, it's interesting because, some people, I mean, you've definitely heard this, they say that like when the Constitution was being drafted, basically it was like, what was it? The Bank of England had bought the debt
Mm-hmm.
note from France.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
basically, like these banks had like sort of gotten us back.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Like
it's like this thing was like sleeping right here.
I read a no. So that was further along. That was further along. That was further along when that happened. I read something, it's not associated with this, but it was an article that was just talking about billionaires buy out millionaires, and it was just talking about Schwab's and things like that. So that was a little further along in this projected path. But that's so then man, so that just opens up a whole nother like wave of things, just far as like economics and
Yeah.
who was really controlling what. um
Yeah.
you know because like
Yeah.
they tell you, if you want to know what's really going on, just follow the money.
Oh God. Yeah.
So yeah, so okay, so I won't veer off into that, but you
Well, that's
open up.
another thing with this eighth house. Is the eighth house to the second house?
Yeah, oh, so
This
yeah,
is
second
like
house.
it's like the material financial axis.
mm,
So
it is.
second house is like what you earn from your own efforts. So it's like your money.
And this is inheritance, more or less.
Yeah, it's inheritance, it's institutional money, it's settlements, like all that kind of stuff.
Oh my goodness gracious. So I mean, even in that, man, I mean,
So Pluto's gonna like change like the money house, the second house, and it's
mhm.
got Capricorn in there, and that it's like the institution of banking. So Pluto's rearranging that, but it's looking over here at the eighth, and it's like
That says a lot.
you're
That
gonna
says
do
a whole
something
lot.
new.
That I mean, that is just so packed and loaded
Oh,
where I mean, we would have to do a whole nother session on that. I mean, because
yeah.
of like what it was founded on, and then just like the labor, the slave trade, all of that, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mm,
it's all tied, or even like the land that was stolen from the indigenous people,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
the
All
people
those
who were
different people.
associated with doing so.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like some of that's coming going definitely not some. I feel like a lot of that's coming into place as well, because of what happened in Philadelphia. When you get into so we were kind of hitting on the whole thing about Masons with George Washington, and they were like P2 Masons, and
Oh, they were P2.
yeah, they
Wow.
were P2. And so like then you are dealing with their relationships that they had with um the Moors prior to this, you know.
Okay.
Okay, so when you start getting into a lot of that, then I mean, and there are a lot of letters that I read when I had the chance like years ago with George Washington writing letters to Morocco, you know, and
Oh,
and that whole thing about saying, and just to kind of like touch base on it a little bit, he would be like
please.
asking for the fleet of ships that had docked portside to be released, but he knew that they didn't have the proper paperwork to dock there. But if he would, your majesty would be so kind and having forgiveness and releasing his fleet of ships, that they knew that this would be grounds for a good foundation for the relationship they were trying to like build. So that made me think like, who, what? So for ships to dock there and then a whole fleet of ships to be seized, that means that there was already an established institution that was already in place.
Yeah. I wanted to
And,
ask you about this whole thing with the Sultan of Morocco. So,
mhm.
so basically, the Sultan was the first world leader to acknowledge American independence, even before the French.
Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to,
That was the Treaty of Friendship and Peace.
okay, so
Mhm.
is that kind of like being a made man? How like another made man has to like invite you in? Like, is it
Yep.
that kind of a thing?
Yep. You have to be like accepted.
So a free and
And
accepted Mason.
exactly.
Okay. Wow, really? Damn.
Exactly. You know, and so you have free and accepted, and you have ancient free and accepted,
Huh.
as far as masonry is concerned, and free and accepted you see more in America, and then with some of the other lodges around the world, but you see some of those in America too, as ancient free and accepted. So
What's the functional difference between the two?
it's a lot. It's a lot. It's there shouldn't be any difference, but I mean, you can go like through the history. So through the history, you know, some of the Masons, well, a lot of the Masons that from England that came here, they didn't want people of color to be like on the same playing field. So they didn't want the charter to be accepted back in the
Oh,
Grand Lodge of England, and it got real funky between them. But then it was officially established on certain levels. I mean, on levels where it had to be accepted. So that word accepted is a really big deal. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Also with like, so with Morocco, um, so like a lot of times when it came to um the Moors were the ones that really had a lot to do with they had a lot also to do with how things were governed in America, or what they call Turtle Island, you know,
Sure.
um, the Northwest Gate. Okay,
Yeah.
so because the Moors were also the ones that understood the waterways, you know what I mean? Like a lot of times when it came to selling and things like that, they were the ones that were already selling these shores, So when you look at so I'll break it down like this, to kind of like summarize it a little bit. So when you, like we were talking about before about degrees, okay, so you got 33 degrees in masonry, that's like the highest, in masonry. And then you have other lodges and things beyond that.
Mm.
But when you look at the headpiece that the Moors wear, or you might see Shriners and things like that,
Oh, the
it's
fez.
yeah, fez. There we go.
Oh,
So
and it's
now
got the circle.
exactly, and that tassel that's on the top of the fez, the reason why it swings around like that, because it's saying that they have 360 degrees of knowledge. So they have
Oh,
all knowledge, you know what I
there's no
mean?
compartments. It's full
Exactly.
picture.
It's all there. Exactly. So
Wow.
that's what that means. So masonry comes from more science. It's a
That's
part of
interesting.
more science. So
Do you think that goes
and
back to like Atlantis and all
yes,
the, yeah,
yes.
yeah,
And Lemuria and Atlantis. But
yeah,
so, and even like, so even with the feds or whatever, right? So like in the Library of Congress, um you'll see like a Quran and the Bible, and then you'll see that some of our presidents have a fez on their head, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So like what a lot of times people don't understand is that we're still operating out of some sense, depending on what level you play the game, under Islamic rule. And now that might blow the minds of a lot of people to really even begin to understand that. But a lot of our presidents are taking oaths with that fez on, with their hand on the Quran as well, and that's because of
Wow.
how this country was established, for them to be able to be accepted, in the geopolitical sense of things, because, and this has a lot to do with why they don't teach you about the Ottoman Empire, but we know that the Ottoman Empire kind of fell right before World War One,
Yeah.
and so yeah,
So,
so this thing goes, it's a lot to it. It goes very deep, and like I said, I think a lot of the illusions that were presented on different levels, for the wrong reasons, because it was supposed to be a good thing. It was originally a good thing, the New World. They come in here and establishing things a certain way.
yeah,
But there were things that were kind of like already, like there were things that were happening here for a very long time. Not even in the way that they paint indigenous communities, but look, the one place that I like to like give example of is San Francisco. Like a lot of the structures that are there. A lot of the
yeah,
structures in San Francisco have been there for thousands of years, or at least 1,000 years, not thousands of years, but at least 1,000 years.
yeah.
And, for us to really have a stronger understanding about, okay, well, when did history get revamped? We got to look at the world fairs, you know?
Yeah.
First World Fair was in San Fran, and it was for a reason. And then in Chicago, it was for a reason. And then in France, it was for a reason. You
And they
know,
keep
because
tearing these World's Fair
exactly,
villages down.
exactly, they were rewriting history or
And they were
reconstructing
gorgeous.
history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's why with that whole piece with Venus and the star cutting through or whatever, I was curious because I was like, I do feel like we're coming into this space of just knowing, where we don't have to be fed information, but
Yeah.
I know a lot of times in the spiritual realm, when you have something happen to you spiritually, you don't really have to think about it. You just know, like, okay, that just happened. I might not be able to tell anybody, but I know for sure this just happened. So it just had me curious as to, as the cosmic, in that cosmic state, so the celestials kind of line up in a certain place where it might push off a certain vibration of where, first you have like this pressure to like force you to wake up. And then once you wake up, it makes it a lot easier for you to be able to see like, this is the truth here. You know what I mean? So we'll see. We're in for a very interesting 2 years for sure.
Oh, hell yeah. I wanted to jump back a little bit to kind of get some clarification. So with this ancient system with the presidents swearing on a Quran in addition to a Bible, with the fezzes, I think like Harry Truman's the one that comes to mind.
Boom.
With the fez.
Yep.
Does this system give, say, like the Saudi royals like leverage over the American government?
That's a good question.
Because we sort of seem to do whatever the hell they want at times.
Yeah, they definitely have to answer on certain now. So okay, so the reason why I say I'm not really sure, but you do see those relationships. You see those relations undoubtedly, no matter what they are feeding us in the media, like, oh, we don't like this, we don't like that, whatever. You know what I'm saying? When push comes to shove, like there's a certain order that we see them following all the time. I can't say for sure. Like I don't really know like what's going on those levels now. But what I can say is that these so they, what do they call it? Like, so okay, boom. For example, yeah, exactly.
Like what the hell was this?
Exactly. Like if they follow a certain order, whether people want to believe that or not and want to think that they're enemies, they're all on the same page.
Oh, it's all a club. Yeah.
But they're not allowed to let the masses know that,
right.
like
They freak out.
They freak out. Now, the interesting thing about Trump's interesting me because Trump follows a different set of rules, like which is why he irritated the crap out of so many people, in those circles, you know what I mean? At that level, he irritated the crap out of them. And he did a good job of exposing a lot of things. Now, if you're just looking at a surface level, you missed the whole thing. You missed the whole thing about what was going on with Trump, If you get caught up into the circus of the media and all that, you missed it, but he did a good job of exposing. I mean, it was during a debate. And they asked him a question in regard to Native Americans, and he's very ballsy, They asked him a question about Native Americans, and I don't discredit anybody and the horrors that the Native American community has been through is atrocious on different levels. Now, to what level do they understand? And see, this is the thing about truth. Truth hurts. The truth hurts on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
He asked and said, what Native Americans? And people missed that because he was talking about the indigenous people that were already here. You know, he wasn't talking about some of the things that have happened, you know, over time, where certain groups of people have been able to identify as Native American or the
Right.
natives of the Americas or Northwest Amexa, you know. So this land has been called a lot of different things, but it just showed me that he's a lot more informed than what people really wanted to give him credit for.
Yeah.
And that was a real slick way of saying, like, I know the truth and you can't lie to me, you know.
Yeah.
Now he's playing, he's into politics, so you know, they all got their way of making sure they get what they want. But I thought that was very interesting that he would even like open his mouth to even say that, like, what Native Americans, you know, because he understood that there had been a lot of things that went on with the indigenous people that were here, because
Wow.
in some of those letters with George Washington writing back to Morocco, it was called providences, you know what I mean? Or Moorish domains, excuse me.
Okay.
You had a lot of Moorish domains, and the person who was like more or less that enforced the law in the Moorish domains was the sheriff.
Yeah, the Sharif.
Yeah, Sharif, exactly. So when we get into the whole thing about, you know, police, and then you get into the whole thing about Jesuits and all that kind of stuff, it's a lot of history that has been like, you
Yeah.
know, they try to mix it all up and put it in the oven and like bake a cake with it, but it's not the same. It really isn't.
No. No.
But we've been dumbed down to such a degree where people can't really identify the differences and like how these things were established over time, because they don't teach it.
Yeah. Well, even this whole thing about like Native Americans, like I think, you know, like indigenous, it's like we're taught that it was just people with kind of this like, you know, copper red skin, but it's like I think it was every skin color.
Yep.
Because I'm tracking a weird thing down. Like I've told you about some of this. My dad's side, you know, they're from French Canada. And the story is they came over in the 1600s. They originally were kind of in like the southeast of France, and they got to Normandy and the kind of the northwest, and then made their way to Canada. But I do the genetic test, and the haplogroup I get from my dad, my paternal one, it's like the R1b A2. It's the predominating male haplogroup on the west coast of Ireland and the Scottish Highlands.
Okay.
And those were some of the people who were sailing over here. So it's like,
Definitely.
Seems like the people who sailed, they kind of stuck with a latitude because they were accustomed to a certain amount of sunlight and they tolerated a certain amount. So
exactly.
I think the Irish made it to those northern places, and I think they were probably living in French Canada. And then one day in the 1500s, some Frenchman shows up and is like, "Hey, we're gonna live here," and they're like, "Yeah, all right, just don't do anything crazy."
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. You know, it's funny when you start talking about Ireland. So I can't be specific, but maybe we'll have a chance to do this, because I do have like notes that I've taken, because I was tracking some things too. And then so when we started talking about Ireland, and then we can get into some things about Lemuria, and then
That'd be
like the
interesting.
west coast of America, California.
Oh, Califia, the queen, and
yes,
yeah,
yes, and then you can get into some of the things with the indigenous people there that were Irish, you know, like
like Catalina Island.
Yeah,
they were like gingers when like the Spanish pulled in.
Exactly. Exactly. So you know, because you have to go and dig and really cross-reference, you know, things a lot. But It's there though. When you start talking about Ireland and you start talking about indigenous, a lot of it is definitely, from what I've had a chance to study, is there in the west part of the Americas, particularly California, particularly um San Fran, like that whole Golden Gate
Yeah.
place around there, because these were so you know what I haven't had a chance to do that I was going to do? I was going to look at the ley lines. That's what I was going to do, because a lot of these cities are on major ley lines, where free source of energy used to flow on certain levels.
Yeah. While you were doing that, I was trying to find something, but basically Disney made like a movie about California.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a quick little thing. It was about when the Spanish landed and they talked about this Queen Calafia, and they had Whoopi Goldberg play her.
Oh, really?
And I was going to ask you, like, so I understand too, though, in California, there were like Moorish or, black people, or, I don't know what the correct term.
The indigenous people were already here. Now the Moors domains, they were just the ones that were kind of governing this space. Oh, because they were already, not only them, the Vikings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everybody here was always coming to the America. If you knew how to sell, you will come into the Americas. You know what I mean?
Getting away from the crowding and the oppression, and it's like, let's get over there.
I've had a chance to read official documentation, even out of Africa, like certain tribes out of Africa were going to South America. They were selling to South America. Like if they had famine in some part of Africa somewhere or whatever, they would load the boat with gold, and they will go to South America and they will get corn, and things like that. Or just, like trade was going on all throughout the place. So that when they try to make it sound like we discovered what? Like you didn't discover anything. This is always going on. This whole there's a book, The Americas Before 1500, that talked about these indigenous that were selling around the world. There's documentation, in regard to so so just kind of bringing it back up a little bit here, because we kind of get into that whole thing about more, so we kind of got to go into like Spain, and then like, okay, so when the Moors, the Moors kind of like more or less brought like this whole what do you call it? Words are just slipping today, but like Renaissance, to Spain. And just to kind of summarize it, there's a lot of details behind it, but to kind of summarize it, it was because of what was happening there religiously. The Muslims and the Unitarian Christians or believers were being persecuted, by the Trinitarians. So that was kind of part of the reason why the Moors came from North Africa into that part of the world, because they were asked to, on some level, you know what I mean? There was something that was going on with that. And when they came into Spain, it was a great Renaissance where, the oils, and because the Moors we're still talking Ottoman Empire to some degree, you know what I mean? Like, the oils, the spices, the aromas, the silks, like, because they were sellers. They knew how to sell the world, so even in that sense, they were very cultured, because they, you can't go to other lands and not know anything about these other lands and expect people to trade with you, so so that's kind of that whole piece there. But you know, these guys weren't too happy about that. So I think it was like 800 years or so that, you know, there was a Renaissance in Spain. And then they began, the Moors fell in Spain. And there were lots of things that happened, but more or less you got the black market popping off, coming from, you know, from Europe, from the southern parts of Europe or whatever, which is how they kind of infiltrated the Ottoman Empire, you know, because they understood, they begin to understand, like, you got to get your person in and then marry into the family. And then once you marry into the family, then that gives us the right to kind of govern certain things a certain way.
Yeah.
So that you can bring that back this way. You know what I mean? Like, it's a kickback type situation. And it worked. It worked very well on a lot of different levels. And I just kind of feel like, if you kind of have a chance to kind of read through Moore's history, or the ancient history anyway, they kind of just got laxed. You know what I mean? They were so used to doing what they want, the way they want it. And I think one of the big turning points was a merchant named Charles the Hammer. He came through and really bust stuff up, you know, like he didn't care who it was. He was about that life. He was about that life. And you know, like I said, like when you start talking about Rome and the Pope and things like that, you know, they were used to at one point having that kind of power and control, and they waited. So you have in 1490 Pope Innocent the Eighth. He declares war on all indigenous people all around the world. And then by the time you get to 1492, they're pretty established about how they're going to deploy their campaigns and things like that. So you got that whole thing going on. And then you got the last standhold was Tripoli. And so this is where history gets a little funky, because Thomas Jefferson was the one who created the Marines, I believe, the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Okay, so so the shores of Tripoli.
Yeah.
So you've heard of shore, because like when you listen to the Marine Corps song, To the Shores of Tripoli, that's what that's all about. That was the last Moorish stronghold that they needed to bring down to kind of establish this order that they were trying to put in place. Because like I said, it was things that are already going on in America, and America's always been a republic, you know, it's always been a republic, you know.
Yeah.
But under how it was established and what was going on, it's a lot of history that's been, you know, whitewashed or kind of taken out to only sell the story that they, because you know, to the victor always gets to tell the story the way he wants to. You know. So so with that being said, like, you know, when Tripoli fell, so then like you started to hear you know about the transatlantic slave trade, but you don't really hear about the transatlantic wars. And then you begin to hear more about like the pirates of the Caribbean, but really those were just Moors that already understood how to sail those seas, you know. So it's a fight for this whole waterway. Who's going to control it? Because if you got a strong navy, which is why the British made sure that their navy was strong as hell, you know what I'm saying? Because that was how you fought then. You needed a strong navy to really say who was going to be able to do what. So you get into some of that stuff, and then some of the other more cooler stuff that was taking place in the Americas gets lost because it opens other doors to things that were actually going on with some of the indigenous here, some of the things that had been here, for, like I said, for 1,000 years at least. And then when you get into like the Grand Canyon, which when I drove across country, I had a chance to visit the Grand Canyon myself. I mean, the stuff they tell us about, like the Colorado River carved the Grand Canyon, like, yo, get out of here, man. Like, seriously, like if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, like you understand, no river carved that, something happened there.
The thing's a trickle compared to that canyon.
I mean, like somebody taking a leak in the yard, compared to that canyon, like it's just no way. It's just absolutely no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, it's like the canyon created the river.
Exactly. Like one of the things that I saw at the Grand Canyon with my own eyes were all of these temples, like
Oh, you were able to see those?
Literal, I have to send you some pictures, like literal temples, man, like
Yeah.
undeniable temples. And it looked like some type of bomb or something happened there at some point. Maybe some type of cataclysmic event, but
were the canyon walls burned? Because you know how there's like places around the world like Petra where it's like the canyon wall looks like it, like
you can smell it,
burned at high heat.
You can smell it. I actually brought wood back from the Grand Canyon because I was so surprised at how it smelled like it had been burned. You know what I mean? Like you can, if you ever get a chance and you get a chance to go out there yourself, you'll see. I mean, honestly, you're on holy ground because as soon as you get there, it's kind of like even more than DC. When I got to the Grand Canyon, because it's it's like mountainous terrain to some degree or whatever. And when you get out of your vehicle and so you kind of like park on the side of the road and you walk across, Petra, exactly. The walls are burnt the same way. The canyons, like I'm gonna have to send you some pictures, but it's kind of got that same red glow on and you can smell it in the air though. But you can physically smell it in the air. Yeah, like no question about it.
Now
like I did,
it.
I mean, it was my first time at the Grand Canyon, so I was a little adventurous. So I kind of like climbed down some rocks, some boulders or whatever. I was like, yeah, I don't want to just get it from the top view. So I kind of took the chance and kind of like climbed down to areas where I can climb down in, and so look, like, come on, like there's and the pictures don't do it any justice, even though it's beautiful. You can physically see that there are temples there, and it's like this structure, like it kind of like collapsed a little bit, but there even like, so look at this one to the right. You see how like, the one to the right, you see how you have like these defined levels to it or whatever.
Yeah, it's very regular.
You have a lot of that all throughout the Grand Canyon.
This is like, you ever seen the Sphinx in Pakistan?
I've heard about it, and I've seen it on like the New York Times or something like that.
Yeah,
it was an article that had came out in like the late 1900s or what, I mean like 1920 or something. So okay, this is the Sphinx in Pakistan.
Yeah.
See, and that's what I'm saying. Like the way they make you think is only one Sphinx. They make you think it's a Sphinx only in Egypt.
Like the Ark of the Covenant, it's like,
it's
like which one?
Exactly. And then you can see like the structures, or I mean, you can see it's like, eroded, but you can still see a lot of the structures that are around it too. And this is what I mean about the Grand Canyon and California. Like, well, with the Grand Canyon, when you get there, like I said, when you get out of the car, the vibration from the land, you can feel, like you can physically feel that you are on holy ground, period. No questions about it. So much so when I left, because you have to drive through Navajo territory to get there. You have to drive like maybe like an hour, 2 hours through the Navajo reservation or whatever to get there. And the whole time you can feel that energy building up until you get to the canes.
Mm. It's been a long time, but it's like, yeah, it's like I can appreciate what you're saying, because it's like, yeah, there's something about it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely
Remember
something about it.
the first time I went there, I was like, it was like 2004, and I was driving across country because I was getting transferred from Virginia Beach to San Diego.
Mm.
It was after a long day of driving. It was like in the middle of the night, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm gonna sleep near the Grand Canyon, and I'm gonna go there in the morning.
Okay.
So I drove through that reservation, and it's like I got to like a Best Western or something, and I was like, my nerves were like, and I could feel like my heart was like
shaky. Yeah. Yeah.
I was in the
Same
shower.
thing.
I'm like, what the fuck's going on?
Exactly. It's so funny that you said it, because I was thinking about, like, the night prior, I was thinking about sleeping at the, like, just going and doing the same thing, but I didn't. So now that you're saying that, it kind of brings me back to the point that I just thought maybe it was the heat or something. But if I would have stayed there that night, I probably would have woke up like so out of my element, because the vibrations that are coming off the land is, you can, even like 2 hours after I left, I can still feel it. You know what I mean? There was just something about the land that I can just physically feel, you know, that was like my nerves, where I had to like reground myself because of all of the power that was coming off of it.
Yeah. It's wild. Yeah, we're gonna learn a lot about this country.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, even with you know, just like this on this whole tip, like the what are the Crystal Taverns in Tennessee? Where they found like Hebrew or Aramaic carvings on the walls of the Crystal Taverns or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, okay, so if that's the case, and we're talking indigenous or whatever the case may be or whatever, and you know, like a lot of the you know, tribes or the well, they say that Cherokee is a language, but I mean, I don't really know what the tribe is, but even with, just for the sake of like this conversation, like a lot of it is kind of like Aramaic or Hebrew, but the language itself, you know. So when you start talking about lost tribes and things like that, really are where they really lost, you know, like,
yeah. Exactly.
you know.
Yeah,
So
it's funny, like my so what is this? So my dad's mom, you know, people in the family are like, oh yeah, your grandmother's father was a full Nipmuc Indian. So the Nipmucs were like in Connecticut, you know, maybe like 50 miles from the coast. Let me see if I can maybe, before we wrap this up, pull up his picture.
okay.
So, and I think I showed you this, but the guy is like, you find his picture and he's like Sephardic. And that's what the DNA tests come back with. So it's like, yeah, Phoenicians, right?
Bro, okay. Phoenician blood.
Let me see. Let me see if I can just. Oh, here we go. Oh, where is this guy? Let me just open this up. Yeah, but the guy was like, they actually, you know, they knew the whole culture, and like he was actually trying to build like a little like miniature like reservation.
Really?
For people in the tribe to live on. And it's like, but you look at this guy and it's like, that guy was not what they tell you about Native Americans. Like,
Exactly.
oh yeah, here we go. You pull up a few of these. But yeah, it's like one of those things. It's like, you gotta be. There's a third one I want to find here. Well, I ran out of room. Yeah, I don't want to tie up too much of this video with this, but
No. You
oh,
good.
here we go. All right, let me just minimize some stuff because I've got so much stuff going on. Okay, number one. Yeah, it's like really.
Wow.
It's like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's like,
And
okay, if you want to go with conventional thinking, it's like, yeah, this guy might be part, like red person, but it's like, nah, he ain't really that though. He's got curly hair.
The hair, I mean, but you know what? The nose, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The eyes, sucking around the eyes or whatever. So like so some of the bone structure, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it definitely looks different from what they tell you, but
yeah.
I can definitely see that. Only because I'm so into this and I'm just like, okay, yeah.
Same guy. It's like, this guy's Jewish.
Yeah. For sure. Wow. And this is okay. Is that the same guy?
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, just super weird.
Yeah. Definitely. That shows you we don't know anything,
Exactly.
That's pretty much what this boils down to, but we're coming into understanding, you know what I mean? We've been fed a bunch of garbage. And I mean, for another story for another time, but we know like the 1700s were pretty much, man, it was a full out war in the 1700s in this country, like far as like people were trying to establish what was going to be the truth and what was going to be a lie,
It's like, what was the revolution really? Like, was it just the European corporation like taking over?
Exactly. It when we get into the 1700s, it gets really nasty, really nasty. And those are going to be some of the kind of things that are going to be exposed that I feel like is going to cause a lot of pressure and crumble some things.
Yeah.
And people are going to like really start thinking about what is it that I really believe in. And then we will, from there, will be the beginning of us being able to move forward.
Yeah.
And reestablishing what needs to happen because, the illusions have been thick for, over 200 years, you know what I mean? And I don't think they can put anything else in that basket now, you know what I mean? Like it's busting at the seams.
It's like I've told you before, like, especially like even my 20s, like coming to the South the first time, I was like meeting Black people in the South. I'm like, they're from here.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And then if you go to Quebec and French Canada, it's like, I think these people, like even like the white people, it's like, I think these people are from here.
Exactly. And you know what? But you know what? Black people struggle with that if they're not really aware. You know what I mean? Because of the indoctrination and from the control of their perspective, and because something, if you're not in charge or in control of yourself, you best believe something else is. And it's like, I've had a chance to do some stuff like I said, during the Reconstruction was ugly, very ugly. Very ugly. I mean, and even with so for perfect point in case, Wilmington.
I was just thinking about this.
Yeah, the only place on American soil that's had a coup d'etat.
Yeah. Anyone who's not familiar with this, what was it? Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. It was basically a coup in there.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can tell it better than I can.
Exactly. They overthrew the government. And the thing about the government was it was a very thriving government. It was made up
Hmm.
of people of color, black people, and
Very
white
successful
people.
too.
Yeah, yeah, very, because it's a
Very
port town.
prosperous.
It's a port town.
Yeah.
What this goes into, why Raleigh Durham was the first Black Wall Street.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
before Oklahoma, but there were thriving Black towns all throughout the Americas. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But they make it seem like, okay, we got to tell them about this one right here because we
Yeah.
bombed that one. So there's no way we can hide that.
Yeah. And
But
they didn't piece it together in 30 or 50 years after like emancipation. Like
that's what I'm
they've been
saying.
doing it for
It makes
centuries.
sense. I mean, even with like the crop watermelon, like they try, like, the media did back in the day, did a really good job of undermining the crop of the watermelon, but like it was one of the most successful crops that was grown and shipped worldwide. But in a lot of the political cartoons, they make a lot of fun of it with like Black people with big lips and eating watermelon and things like that to minimize it. Like this whole
Wow.
thing of like media is serious. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
like cotton, all of it, but with Wilmington in particular, it was a republic government that was in Wilmington, made of like Black people and white people that were working together,
yeah.
which is why it was so successful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there were a lot of people who hated that,
Oh, the establishment now, the New World
they
establishment
hated
hates
that.
that.
They hated that with a passion. I mean, part of the reason why what set off the coup, and I wrap this up because I know we're running short on time here,
Yeah, yeah.
was because of a Black newspaper, a Black-owned newspaper that was in Wilmington. And it's still there on well, it's not there anymore, but it was on like on Market Street,
Oh,
like going downtown.
okay.
And they wrote an article on it has something to do with white women wanting to be with Black men. And that set off a freaking firestorm.
Wow.
A firestorm, because you got to remember there are a lot of wealthy merchants that are coming into Wilmington. You know what I'm saying? You even see it now with longshoremen that are in Wilmington.
Yeah.
And then, like the Masonic order was heavy in Wilmington. So these are not uneducated, uncultured people, because it's a port town. So you got a lot of sailors coming in and out, a lot of big business happening, So that set off a firestorm. And the thing about that a coup, they burned every Black newspaper in North and South Carolina on the same day.
Holy crap.
Yeah, very well organized. Very well organized. And it was said for a long time, they didn't even tell their children because they didn't want nobody to know about what they had done. So if their children didn't know and their children's children didn't know, then it creates this whole thing. I don't know what you're talking about. We never did this.
So
That's how thorough they were.
They don't know why that Harvard, Yale, and Princeton still has buildings named after those insurrectionists even today.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So they made sure they didn't even tell their children about what they were going to do. Yeah.
I think our next episode should just be like this hidden history of America. That's probably a good place to take it.
I'm with it, bro.
Cool.
I'm with it.
Cool.
Well,
let's wrap it up here.
Huh?
Let's wrap it up here. I gotta bust and move. Are there people know my site, but do you have a website or anything you want people to know about at this stage in the game, or?
Not yet. Only thing I have right now is just far as work for as like analytics, but as far as this history thing and things like that, looking to kind of collaborate. I have a Instagram. So my Instagram is lit LIT strength.
Okay.
And you know, it's just different stuff on there. I mean, I usually drop things about vibration and energy here and there on there. I'm big into
Cool.
fitness, big into wellness, but I think this is more or less like my kind of coming out party. I just needed a reason
Yeah.
to kind of break out a little bit. And
Oh
you know, I
yeah.
appreciate you, man, for having
Oh,
me on.
I
It's been
appreciate
a
you.
pleasure.
This is like what I want these videos I make to be. Like when it's just me, I'm like, I hear myself in my own head all day. It's like,
I feel you, completely understood.
cool.
You know, so but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I know you got to I got a meeting in 30 minutes, so
Okay.
or
All
15
right. Well,
minutes.
we're on the same page. Well, thank you
Okay,
so
cool.
much.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Enjoy the thunderstorm, but don't get soaked. And
Yeah.
I'll speak to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Terrence.
All right, peace.
Have a nice one.